again. Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature, how birding can change lives and lands, with expedition leaders Lilia Gonzalez and Fernando Romo. Thank you both for being here with us today. We appreciate it. Lilia, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Colby, and thank you so much, Natural Habitat, for giving us this space. Be talking about birds and always some topics that we love. Today, if we change the slide, please. I'm going to be introducing myself. Probably you have seen some of my webinars before. My name is Lilia Gonzalez. I'm an expedition leader for Natural Habitat for the last 3 years or so. I was born and raised in Mexico City, and since very little, I wanted to become a biologist because I love nature. I'm sure that most of you do it too. I have been doing most of my webinars on different topics, monarch butterflies, then whales, penguins, but never like going very into birding, which is one of my colleagues' favorite activities. So let me introduce to Fernando Romo. Please, Fernando, tell us a little bit more about your experience.
Thank you,
in
Lilia.
general.
Thank you, Lilia. Hi, guys, everybody, to be on this webinar. So thank you, Colby and Natural Habitat. As Lilia was mentioned, well, I really into birds. Something about me, well, I was born and raised in Mexico City. I moved to the beach town of Puerto Vallarta. So as you can imagine, well, Mexico City is a large city, so it's hard to be in contact with nature, especially when we were in Mexico City. So when I was living in Mexico City, it was hard to be in contact with the nature, because the size of the city. So I decided to move to Puerto Vallarta to do one of my dreams, which was be a marine biologist. So I studied marine biology for 4 years in Puerto Vallarta. This is on the Pacific Ocean of Mexico. Most of my career, I did research, and I still do research about marine mammals, which is whales, dolphins, a little bit on the sea turtles release babies. So for a long time, my passion, it was marine mammals, actually. So I spent a lot of time doing this research that actually Lily and I are doing this research still on the projects that we're still running in Puerto Vallarta. So
just before, sorry, Fernando, before you continue, I want to let you know, well, to our guests, that there is a storm here in where I'm living at. Actually, it's a hurricane again. So okay. My connection probably is not very steady. If it's going very bad, I'm going to switch off the video, and Fernando is going to continue. But I'm going to be here. Just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you very much. So basically, guys, just to continue, how did I become a birder? How did I become a birder? Well, this is a story that I like to share on the tours that we do with all the NatHab travelers. Basically, living in Puerto Vallarta, I used to have 3 dogs in Puerto Vallarta. This is a long time ago. And I used to walk my dogs every day into a cornfield plantation, a beautiful area that you see nothing but cornfields, cows, and farmers all over around. So I used to take my dogs into this walk every day. And one day, my dogs ran into crops that were on the ground, and they scared a flock of birds. Most of the birds were like a little brown birds, those ones that you never see. But one of the birds, it was a painted bunting. Maybe some of you know about this beautiful bird, but I didn't on that time. So when I saw that bird, guys,
wow, beautiful.
My head blew. It was just amazing for me. I like to call the painted bunting as my spark bird, because it was so amazing for me to see it that I was totally determined to take a photo of that bird. So it was like a super amazing moment for me that I still remember, and it brings me a lot of emotion for this bird.
We can
So
see that. Yeah, it's a beautiful
yes,
bird.
I'm still excited about. So on my way to find that bird and photograph that bird, because I had no idea about what birding was about. I have no idea. So on my way to find this painted bunting, I realized how many birds were around me, how many birds were in the area where I was walking my dogs every day, and I never pay attention to them. Like vermilion flycatcher here on my left hand side, burrowing owl, elegant quails. They were all over around me, and I never see them before because I was just
Wow.
focused on other things. So that's basically how I became a birder, because that was that particular moment that I really, really enjoy in my life.
And it's amazing how these great things can happen around us, and we do not even pay attention, and we don't notice. Imagine if we start looking actually around. It's not only birds; it's a lot of plant species. It's a lot of dynamics,
A lot of
ecosystem dynamics.
butterflies, insects, exactly.
Exactly. It's amazing. Good.
So of course, after this happened to me, I start searching for more birds. This is never-ending activity. So it turns into my hobby. So I start traveling to different countries like Peru, like Panama, for example. Like I did some places in the US, like Yellowstone, for example. And my whole idea, it was just searching for more birds and be able to photograph these species of birds that I never seen before.
Did you have a list at the beginning, or it was
No,
just
actually, I did not, Lily. I just had my pictures. Now with the new technology that we're gonna be talking about, I'm able to upload my sightings from those days into an app and create all my list of birds that I've seen through all my life. But I will talk about that later.
Yeah, what I meant is like a list of your favorite birds that you want to look or to see.
Ah, okay, got it. Yes,
The
I do.
wishing list.
Yes, I do. I want to go to Papua New Guinea to see the birds of paradise. That would be on
Oh,
my number one area to travel now.
good,
Yeah, yes.
good, good.
So guys, also wildlife photography is completely different. As I was talking before, well, I used to do a lot of whale watching, a lot of whale research back in Puerto Vallarta, like this beautiful picture of the humpback whale breaching. So I was used to photograph big animals only. Suddenly, I changed my skills to hummingbirds, for example, which is a completely different technique that you have to use. You need to be more patient in order to get photos of hummingbirds or any little bird that you know. It changed a little bit all the skills you need to have, but it's so
Setting.
much fun. It's so much fun, Lily.
Yeah, it's a big change. I mean, 40 tones to I don't know how many grams that
Two
moves
grains
like
of
this.
hummingbirds, exactly.
Yeah,
No, no, no. And this is just amazing when
crazy.
you have to be very patient and waiting for the right moment to photograph these particular birds. So little
Yeah.
by little, I specialize as a bird guide. So I start this in Puerto Vallarta, doing tours in Puerto Vallarta for nothing but birding. So I have the chance to meet a lot of travelers, a lot of friends. I consider my friends now. Teaching a little bit about birds, about photography. This is something that I love to do because the places you visit normally are remote areas from tourist destinations. So you can go to the Yucatan Peninsula, but you get into the mangrove areas just looking for birds, and you're out of the hotel area, for example.
Good.
And also, well, something that we've been doing, Lilia and I and other expedition leaders, it's adding birding to other tours. For example, something that I find out that it was really cool, it's when we do the monarch butterfly tours on the highlands of Mexico, to be able to add some birding activities during these tours, for example. The same thing with the whale shark. We do some whale shark tours in the Yucatan Peninsula. Well, we also do some birding. That's kind of a extra or complement our activities on the tours.
And it complements perfectly because, as you can see, guys, in the first picture on the left, that Fernando is grabbing a big camera. On the back, you can see the big clusters with the monarchs. Those heavy, like, branches that you can see there, those are the clusters with monarchs. And when you are there, also you can see some predators of the monarchs, and those predators are, some of them are birds. So it comes along with the monarchs to have some birding, and also you are going to be in a forest that where you can have also some flowers that they are going to be attracting hummingbirds. So it's an ecosystemic dynamic that we can have in those tours. And actually also with the whale shark, even when we are talking about a fish, we can see some birds around because, of course, we are on the beach. So it always comes around with the birds.
Correct.
Correct.
So little by little, I took my birding passion as my specialized birding skills, and then I tried to go a little bit farther, which this is for me one of the most important things to do as a biologist, as a person who cares about nature conservation. So little by little, I took my family into these kind of activities. You can see my sister family here on the upper left-hand side, my brothers, my nephews right here on the lower part. My mom even is doing more birding now. Remember that here in Mexico, ecotourism is not as big as in other countries. It's getting there, but normally Mexican people are not so much into birds. Actually, some of my family members, they can't believe that people pay me to see birds, for example. They can still like, are you serious? You know, the birds are all over. How can they pay you to do it? Well, this is because I explain them how important is the conservation of the birds and the ecosystem, and they get more into these kind of activities little by little. Also, well, girlfriend, friends, college, neighbors, all these people around me, I feel like I hook them into birding little by little, you know, just when you're walking around in the woods and you show them, oh, there's a nice pygmy owl on that tree, and they see a pygmy owl for the very first time in their lives. It's just like oh my God, they never believe that they will see an owl in the wild, especially on the daytime. So these kind of things make them feel more close to nature, and that's for me very important for conservation and protection of the ecosystems.
Good. Yeah, it's a contagious thing.
It is.
It is. It's pretty much a contagious thing. But when you start with these kind of activities, it's important to have very clear what is a birder. Because if you're this kind of persons that are going to the zoos and see birds in captivity, that's not a birder, for example, or is not considered as a birder. Or the people that is, I don't know, mowing to their lawns or doing something else, and suddenly they see a bird, but they do not, I mean, they just saw it, but not paying attention, they are not interested in identify that bird, that's not considered a birder. Birders are that people that is going to be taking a trip 1 mile or more from their home for the primary purpose of observing birds, and of course, try to identify them. If you are at home and you are having, as Fernando mentioned, if you're near your home or in your patio and you have some birds, but you start to identify them, that's also considered a birder. When you do it for a long period during the day, I mean, more than an hour, for example. It's not just to see one and that's it. So that is considered a birder. So the next slide, please, Fernando. The profile of a birder, well, is this kind of people that is highly educated, is considered to be middle-aged or elderly, usually travel solo or with a partner. Why this? Because most of the time birders prefer small groups than larger, because in a larger group they are going to be making more noise, and to see, in order to see the birds, well, you have to be pretty much quiet. Many members are, many of them are members of a local bird club, and actually also when they are traveling, they can pass 13, 14 days doing this activity away from home. So that is pretty much a general profile of a birder. The next one, please. And about this number, about some numbers, this slide is one of my favorites, because as you can see, we are going to be mention more information about the United States, since it's a phenomenon that is more studied in this country. But in the United States, people can spend, or in general, the population can spend $41 billion annually on birding. So that's a lot of money. And we are going to be going a little bit deeper into this number. The second one is this 287% of people that have been doing this activity, and it's increasing during, if we consider from 1982 to 2009, sorry, is the growth of birders in those years that have been doing this activity of bird watching and taking also photography of the birds. So it's getting noticed, this activity, and more people is joining to do it. I'm sure that not only in the United States, but it's more studied there. 20 million of US citizens took birding trips between 2005 and 2009. So it's a lot of also money that it's people that is getting into trips to see the birds, as Fernando was saying. And they compare in this map with the money that is spending in UK for the same activity. So as you can see, it's a phenomenon that is going worldwide in different countries, and actually it's growing in developing countries. So the 3 million international trips per year for the main purpose of birding. So it's a huge number. It's a crazy number.
Amazing numbers. It's amazing numbers. How much money this activity involved,
and how many people is getting touched by this activity. These numbers are from 2016, so I'm pretty sure that these numbers have been increasing in the last years. So the next one, please. And just to have an idea of how this activity is distributed on the population in the United States, as you can see, the biggest percentages are in the Middle Atlantic and the South Atlantic. And well, in all the country you can see birders, and also, well, the Pacific states that are on the Pacific limit, they also have a 17%. So I think that is pretty much associated to one chart that we are going to see on the next slide. Oh, well, before it's just, I am showing you here the total of birders that the people that was considered for this study. It's 45 million US citizens by 2016, over 16 years old. And it represents like 18% of the population of the United States in total. So 16%, 18% is a lot of people in the United States that are taking this activity quite seriously. The next one, please. But what are they looking? Well, this is pretty much the reason why the people, or the biggest percentages, are near to the coast, because people are looking for waterfowl birds or aquatic birds in general. You can see other water birds that it's the 10.6%, but it's a lot of people that is going to see aquatic birds in general. It's more actually the birds of prey that are more, I don't know, it's bigger, you know, it has more attention of the people. But in this chart, you can see that it's waterfalls actually more than birds of prey. The next one, please. And this one is very interesting, since the economic effect of birding, as you can see in this table, it's very important, because even when we are talking a lot of about 45 million birders, the amount of money that they are expending in doing this activity is a crazy big number. We are talking about almost 40,000 million US dollars. So it's a lot of money that people is paying to do this activity. And of course, they are paying it, and also the local people is going to be affected by that, affected in a good way, because they are going to be creating more jobs. As you can see, it's also a big number of jobs, almost 800,000 of jobs. Probably some of them are going to be seasonal, but it's a lot of jobs that they are going to be creating. And of course, they are going to be having more state tax revenue and federal taxes revenue. So as you can see, it's a more global win-win. Everyone's win in this kind of situations with the bird watching. The next one, please. Or you want to say something on that chart?
No, that's perfecto. That's perfecto. All the numbers are just great to hear.
Yeah, so as you can see, it goes deeper than just go to your garden and see birds and try to identify them. If you are going to these other places to see birds, people start noticing that they can live actually, or they can have an income, an extra income doing that that activity. They are going to start to protect those species of birds, and if they are starting protecting that species of birds, it's going to become an umbrella species. That means that if you are protecting for protecting that species, they are going to protect, for example, the forest or the rest of the ecosystem with all the species and the dynamics that are below that umbrella. So it's very important, because it goes much deeper than just counting or identifying or photographing birds. And that's the important thing that we want to tell you about this, the conservation of birds. And one of the things that are also very important, and that you can take part of it, is the citizen science programs with birds. I'm pretty sure that some of you have heard or are involved in some of them. But these programs enable scientists to collect large amounts of data at minimal cost. This is very important because it's easier, the previous one, please, because it's easier to gather all that information with a lot of volunteers, creating this net of volunteers, than going as a single scientist or a 14 group of scientists with a very limited fund to very distant places. So that's why the citizen science programs are very important. They provide information about the associations among animals and the urban environments. This is very important since our cities have been growing and they are going to continue growing. So these interactions between human cities and birds or wildlife are very, very important and have and well, scientists have to study them. And all the data that is collected can serve to or can be used to do some local planning and land use decisions. So that's why it's so important to keep apporting to these projects. The next one, please.
I love that picture, Lilia, of you showing the birds or the butterflies to that group of kids up on the Monarch Butterfly Reserve. Look their faces, how happy they are. They're so amazed to see through the binoculars. So that's exactly the whole point of the citizen science, or helping people to do these kind of activities. I love that photo, Lilia. Thank you to put it there.
No, my pleasure. I love it too. So one of the apps or the projects that are more famous and the biggest ones, I could say worldwide, is Merlin, sorry. And Fernando is going to tell us a little bit more about this beautiful app.
Well, guys, thank you, Lilia. So yes, this is one of the apps I use a lot on the birding tours. And this is a great way to start to identify the birds around your home, or the birds when you travel. You can download different programs, different countries into this app, and it will show you all the birds, their locations, some information about the birds, the songs of the birds, which is really important to know about. And you can actually use the app to identify birds that you're not sure what are they. You can go from different sizes, from different colors. So this is a really useful app, and this is the one I'm using to upload my old records information, the ones I was talking about before. When I became a birder, this thing didn't exist, by the way. So now that exists, I can actually put all my information available to the science. You know, all sightings are already on this app, which is important to use. Also, well, you can find more birds by using this app. You can share your sightings, as I was talking about, and you can try your list. Where did you go? Where do you want to go? It also shows birds around you. It's easy to use. I just highly recommend it. If you wanna just explore a little bit more into these birds world, you can use this app to be more awareness about the birds around you.
Yes, it's actually very good when you are starting or when you arrive to a new place, or you take a vacation with your family, and you can download the specific area list or the information of
Exactly.
birds, of the bird species, and you can, if you saw, I don't know, very quickly a bird a size of a warbler, and it was, I don't know, yellow and brown, you can start checking or selecting those features on the list, and they are going to display the whole, like a list of possibilities of the species. So until you see the bird that you saw very quickly. So to train your eyes, very, very useful if you're new in an area. It's quite useful.
That's a really good app for that. So it also shows the status and trends for the birds, the migration of the birds, research and conservation. Also, this is a lot of citizen science, and you can add this new technology in order to start birding a little bit more and get more specialized on these kind of activities.
Yes, actually, it's very interesting. You can go into that website and see. You can track the birds at the moment. Where are they migrating? And that's very useful also into conservation programs and to take decisions on conservation, since you are going to have the most updated information at the moment. So it's very useful.
Correct.
The next one, please. But even with all that information, people are still asking, why should I care about birds? I mean, we know that they are there. There are a lot of, like Fernando was saying, a lot of LBBs. That's the thing that we should call them. Little brown bird. A lot of little brown birds outside. But why should I care about them? Well, the birds have a lot of services in the ecosystem, and they are very important for several reasons. For example, they can control pests, or they can control insects. They can in our crops. They can control mouse populations, for example. And this is one of the most common examples. A barn owl may eat in its lifetime more than 11,000 mice that would have consumed 13 tons of crops. So that's a huge, and we are talking about only one owl. So imagine having a very healthy population of these owls. Of course, your crops, or our crops, because the food of everyone's comes from crops, are going to keep them healthy and in a better shape with the ecosystem populations, with ecosystem dynamics. The next one, please. They also are plant pollinators, and this is one of the most common and famous services, or the ecosystemic services, that the birds do. They are going to pollinate between 3 to 5% of more than 1,500 species of crop or medicinal plants, and some of them they cannot pollinate themselves. So that's why it's so important. When I'm not against these feeders or nectar feeders for hummingbirds, but it would be even better for the ecosystem and for the bird populations to have local nectaring flowers in your gardens, because that way they are going to continue with a healthy dynamic in the ecosystem. And well, we have to be very careful of not introducing plant species, but that way they are going to continue with a very healthy dynamic there. The next one, please. And also they are very good seeds dispersers. And that's also a very important thing. In some tropical forests, for example, birds are going to be dispersing up to 92% of all tree and wood species. So without them, and without that service that they provide, probably our tropical forests do not or cannot be existing anymore. So that is why it's not only protecting a species, but all the dynamics of that species on a certain ecosystem are the ones that we have to protect. The next one, please. This one, most of the people do not like it, or is not so obvious to see, since, for example, vultures are not a very popular species, or a nice one, or pretty one, or charismatic, but they also have a role on an ecosystem, and it's so important because they are carcass cleaners. They are going to be scavenging and cleaning wastes, pretty much. So the carcass removal services, for example, in Spain, with vultures, they are going to be saving about 1 million euros, just because without the vultures, they are going they have to remove the carcasses manually in a professional way. So they have to pay for a service that nature is going to provide if we protect our vulture species, or scavenging process species scavenger species in general. So that is why all the species are so important in in certain ecosystems. Something you want to add to this, Fernando?
Actually, it's all very clear, Lilia. Thank you.
Okay, great. Another one that is very important too is that birds are going to be contributing to soil formation. They are going to do it with the guano or with their poop that is going to be fertilizing our soils, and they are going to be giving all the nutrients to have a better crop, or to have all the minerals or the things that they need to continue or to perpetuate the plant species. So that's also very, very important. And it's part of the services that nature is providing.
Here, Lilia, for example, there are some areas, some islands that the main income for the local community is collecting this guano to sell. So, but imagine there's islands that they're being processing guano for the last 20 something years. So that's a good way to make an income, but it's just like imagine the amount of guano on those islands that they need in order to make a living. So that's an amazing, the accumulation of these guano or bird poop is used also for fertilizer.
Yeah, yes, it's impressive. And not only of birds, I'm pretty sure that other species of, for example, bats, they can do or use the guano for the same purposes. But anyway, about birds conservation, well, it depends, of course, of the species, and as I was saying also, or mentioning on my penguins webinar last week, it depends not only on the species, also sometimes it depends on the population specifically that we are talking. But in general numbers, in US and Canada have lost nearly 3 billions of bird populations in the last 50 years. So that's a lot. And these numbers are from 2019. So probably it's even bigger, those numbers now. And you can see, even in the different groups of birds that we have represented in that chart, most of them are going down. So most of them, or 23% of them, are threatened or near threatened with extinction. 44% have declining populations. Bird extinctions and population reductions are already disrupting important ecosystem processes, as I was mentioning before. So we have to do something about it. And of course, it's beautiful to being outside and seeing birds and taking pictures and trying to identifying them. But sharing that information with scientists are going to be giving them tools to protect those species, those areas, and to have a better and a healthier relationship with birds, even when we are living in big cities, because as Fernando was saying, even when you are living in Mexico City, that is one of the biggest cities in the world, you still have birds. So it's very, very important that it doesn't matter where we live, do something for the birds and for the ecosystemic dynamics in general. Something that you want to add in here?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about this, not on the previous one, but basically, well, the conservation we need to do is basically, what can I do for the birds' welfare? So
exactly.
We know that some of the birds are in troubles. We know that, you know, birding is a very important economy for local communities. So something that I love about birding is that we actually involve the local communities into this activity. What can we do actually? Well, basically, growing plants, growing nectar flowers is really important for the pollination that Lilia was talking about. The use of feeders, the local ones, exactly. The use of feeders, it is important to trying to replace the use of feeders for plants, but also a combination of these two, it also works. Not just feeders, only feeders, it will be a nice combination with the flowers. Include all the people on these activities is also very nice, because as Lilia was talking about before, well, the amount of money that we spend for birding reflect on the conservation of these ecosystems. So this is really, really important, and not only for the birds. Of course, birds is the main topic now, but if we help the birds, we're also helping other species like butterflies, like beetles, like grasshoppers. All these kind of animals, they need the restoration of the habitats to do more reforestation, more native nectar flowers is really important for these places. Lilia, something else?
Good.
Lilia,
Yeah.
I forget? No?
No.
Of course, what not to do? Well, littering is something that we have to avoid that already. Do not disturb the birds. So we should try to be the most invisible when we're doing birding. And there is something here, the bird sounds. Sometimes you can use the bird sounds to attract the birds closer. So I like the most natural way, the possible, not to use these bird calls, not all the time, for example. This is really important because when you call the birds, you distract the birds from what they're doing normally. So if you're gonna be doing some bird calls, just do it few times. That would be a recommendation of when you use these kind of apps or the new technology with the birding activity.
Yes, replacing the single use of plastics as one of the things that Natural Habitat is doing in all the trips is one of the most important things, because as you can imagine, sometimes, well, the plastic is going to start breaking into smaller pieces, and sometimes they confuse or they take by mistake one of these small pieces of plastic, and sometimes they are going to be feeding their chicks with those things of plastic. So it's very important that we are careful with plastic in general. If you can say no, it's always better. Okay. So if you want to start birding, as I started pretty much with Fernando's help, one of my recommendations or the tips for beginners is to go out with a hat, for example, or a cap to protect from the sun. If you want to, I would recommend to buy a good pair of binoculars. That's one of the things that you can spend good money, but it's going to have its rewards. Or cameras also, having the fields guide for identification, or having the Merlin app, that's very useful. Of course, if you want to have a list or to make your watching encounter list, that would be also very good. Well, shoes, comfortable shoes, it's always important. And of course, if you are walking on the forest and you are looking up, also watch your step, or you can fall down as the girl on the video. So be careful and try not, if it's the first time that you are going to do some bird watching, try to not go alone with a specialized guide. Is the thing that I meant. So I don't know if you have any extra tips for beginners, Fernando.
Basically, just go out as much as possible. Enjoy your time on the woods.
Yeah.
That's the way I did it. You know, I had my 3 dogs. I just walk around the cornfield plantation, and I got hooked by birds right away. It was a life. That's something that changed my life
Totally.
in so many ways.
Yes. Good. The next one, I think that's it, right?
Thank you guys. Thank you for being
your
here
time.
today.
So we can open it to questions. Colby, if you're there.
Okay, Lilia, Fernando, thank you so much. That was really interesting. A great little tour of the birding world. Before we start the Q&A, I would like to remind everybody that you can submit your own questions via the questions field that's located in your control panel. And I can start us off with some questions that have been asked already.
Okay.
This is to whoever would like to answer. So what is the life expectancy of the average bird, and then what might be the range?
Okay, it really changed from one bird to the other. So, for example, we have macaws that they actually live for about 30 to 60 years, depending on the species. And we have birds that live for about 4 to 5 years. It really depends a lot. So it will be from 5 years to 60 years. That would be the range, more or less.
Okay. Someone was asking, so the birds, like obviously they're on the wing, they can fly around. Can we see any bird in any climate because they can fly around, or do they live in particular places?
Lilia?
Well, that depends on the species. But if you are looking, for example, if you want to see a penguin, of course, you have to go to the southern hemisphere to see one, for example. But if you want to see a tropical bird, you have to approach to that specific ecosystem or region. But we have to remember that some of them, they migrate, and they have huge migration rates or dispersal ranges. So in this case, I would say that as a biologist, it depends on the species that you are looking for. But yes, they have very particular ecosystems, and if you look for those ecosystem characteristics in particular, I'm pretty sure that you are going to have a better clue of where to find them.
There is the case of incidental birds that appear in a habitat that they're not normally there, but that's just incidental appears. So they normally are restricted to their habitats because the food source or the mating or the type of trees they use for build the nest, for example, is on that specific area. So they basically are restricted to their areas, to their habitats.
Yeah. Does that answer the question?
I think so, thank you. So we have a backyard birder who feels like the birds that have been singing in the yard this year are different than birds that were singing last year. Is it normal to expect different changes like that?
Well, let me just answer that, Lily, because it was a year that it was called an invasion of birds. So it's the same that happened to him. It happens to me in Puerto Vallarta. There was birds that I never seen before on these last 15 years of birding on that area where I live. So it was an invasion. Birds that are not normally on that particular areas, they were found this year. So it depends on the annual cycle or the different change on the temperature, probably the food source or something changed that make those birds migrate a little bit further south or farther north, depending where are you. But that can happen every 4 or 5 years, that you see birds that you normally don't see.
And actually, to add to that, we have to consider that our world is always changing, that climate change is real, and that is the temperatures and the conditions in several places around the world are changing, and also the ranges of the distribution of some species are changing too. So yes, we are going to start seeing more different or changing in the distribution of certain species of birds or animals in general.
Correct.
Thank you. That was a great answer. Getting back to parrots, Fernando, you mentioned parrots earlier, and someone's curious, how are parrots doing in terms of their populations?
Well, I can talk about the Mexico's parrots population. They're getting better now. They're under special category of conservation in Mexico as one of the highest conservation categories now in Mexico. The thing about the parrots is that people keep them as pets. So they are funny to hear when they talk or they imitate over words, for example. But that is the main threat for the parrots is the loss of the habitat and the poaching of the eggs or the baby parrots, for example. It's getting better now. There's more efforts to preserve the habitats of these species, but I will say it's not enough yet. We're getting there, but it's not enough.
Okay, let's switch over to gear. Probably the most popular question today is what binoculars are best for bird watching?
Okay, well that's a good one because the prices of the binoculars, it goes from $200 to $1,600. So it's a large variety. I will recommend something that I use in between $400 to $500, and there's many brands of binoculars. One of the most popular ones is Vortex, Celestron, and well, if you want to go a little bit over the price, maybe a little bit more expensive, you can get to Swarovski's. Now it's important to know about the diameter on the binoculars. The one used for birding, you have to find 8 by 42. On any brand that I mentioned, 8 by 42 are powerful enough, and they're not that heavy. So those are the ones I will recommend: Vortex, Celestron, Nikon, or a Swarovski 8 by 42.
Perfect. Thank you, Fernando. Very, very specific. That's what I use as well. I agree. I think your insight as to it's nice for travel makes it a good balance. That's a good size. Well, listen, thank you very much for being here today, both of you. I think, Lilia, do we still have you? Did you want to offer some closing comments for us today?
I think she's not here anymore.
Oh, the hurricane got the best of her. Well, at least she was with us most of the time. But Fernando, maybe you'd like to close it off for us today.
Bueno, guys, well, thank you for being here today. Thank you. I really appreciate it. We hope that this information helps you. And well, birding is amazing. Any wildlife activity is just amazing. For me, it was birding that hooked me into this love for the birds. I will just tell you, go birding and find out which one is going to be your spark bird.
I love that idea of being a spark bird. Well, Fernando and Lilia, in case she sees this later, thank you so much for taking the time to present with us today. We really appreciate it. I would like to also thank everyone who tuned in. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. We have a great lineup this week, so please come back for some more. You can find our lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we'll have the replay available on our website soon. And with that, I will conclude today's webinar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.